Fire Radio.
Hey everybody, Jeremy, National Fire Radio. Welcome back to the show today. A very, very special guest, David Rhodes, the editor-in-chief of Fire Engineering Magazine. This has been a long time coming for me, Chief. You and I had met once before, very briefly. Shook your hand, said, welcome to Fire Engineering, and that was over about a year ago, and that was my first encounter with you. But before I let you get going, I want to say this. Fire engineering to me, I don't know if you know anything about me, but fire engineering to me is super special. I'm the kid that grew up from 14 years old. I looked at Firehouse magazine for the hot shots and the pictures. And then as a 14-year-old kid, I started understanding that the value of fire engineering was bringing forth vetted educational information to better firefighters and to better the fire service. And so I went all in on fire engineering as a kid, and I read that magazine cover to cover 4 times a month, front cover, back cover, you name it, and I saved every single one of them. And so fire engineering for me, then I come to find out as I get a little bit older that they're right in my backyard here in New Jersey is where they are, right? And so, you know, it becomes very special, and I've gotten to meet many people along the ways that are employed by fire engineering, firefighters that have helped create and curate what fire engineering has become, and it is an institution. And so I have to think for you to be able to, as of January of 23, we were just chatting before, you're now the editor-in-chief of probably an institution that you also grew up on, and that was very influential in your career as well. And so I want to welcome you to the show, and I just want to say that this is an absolute treat to have you on today, and I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about your story.
Thanks, man. I've been looking forward to it, too. And before we go too much further, I kind of, now that I see you on camera there, I think I've figured out some of your appeal. I don't know if you're old enough, but you kind of got the Wolfman Jack. You kind of got the Wolfman thing going on. You heard that before?
This is only now, so I've been on vacation.
You kind of got the voice, too.
Yeah, well, the voice is, you know, over time, the voice has done me well. I'm not going to lie. People hear me before they see me, and they
Still
go, I know
got
that
hair.
voice. Yeah.
I mean, I'm jealous.
Yeah, well,
I
this
can do the beard if I want it. But,
this has got to go. I've been on vacation. This is 2 weeks of tanning and growing facial hair. So this weekend the beard comes off.
Everybody is the Wolfman.
Yeah, there you go.
We're gonna spin a few tunes today.
If I didn't stop smoking years ago, I'd probably be down there at that point. But you know, that was 17 years ago when I quit my Camel Lights, and here we are. So,
awesome.
Anyway,
yeah,
thank
it's
you.
pretty cool. You grew up right there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the office has moved a few times, but basically it's just sort of bounced around you. I think now we're in Rochelle Park. You're not that far from there, so.
Yeah, it's cool. You know, I consider myself very fortunate to grow up in this Northeast, area. I'm 25 minutes outside of New York City. There's a lot happening here. And the fun thing about that, though, is the Northeast is rooted in tradition within the fire service, right? And I travel all over the country, and I meet guys all over the country. And so many places are growing so fast. You look at the Southwest and how fast they're growing, and their firehouses are popping up every single day down there, and departments are busting at the seams to continue to grow. I think we lose culture, and there's no blueprint. And so they're building it as they go, which can be exciting and great for them because they get to write the rules, but they have nothing to fall back on.
Yeah, I got to go to the Wyckoff station.
My second due.
Mike Champ took me over there and gave me the tour, and it's firehouse tradition. It's part museum. It's still functional, but it's just the pride that you see that goes into the outdoor memorials for different people, and the signage. And then you look across the street and you're like, wait a minute, there's an ambulance house across the street. Right. Like it's the same service, it's the same things happening, but it's just the culture is just so rich. It's phenomenal just to walk in there and see the pride that's involved in it, which is just amazing.
Well, I think what's really cool about that, and it's a great segue, right? Because a lot of what I wanted to talk to you today about is how much I'm impressed by you are willing to go there with your message. Loyal disobedience, risk adversity, safety culture. Leaders have retreated. These are things that I've picked up in a lot of your different clips in seeing you speak at FDIC. These are all topics that are literally confronting the fire service every single day. And I firmly believe that the editor-in-chief of the Legacy magazine and informational sharing content platform needs to be able to take a stand.
Yeah.
So for you, with culture, you talk about this cradle of revolution. What I'm excited about is what I know in the Northeast with culture and the importance of that, and doubling down on your company's history and doubling down on our people. That is taking hold across the country now.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting.
Absolutely, and it's been happening longer than I've been, in the position. But I think it's a huge responsibility being the editor-in-chief of a historic publication, all the way back to 1877.
Yeah.
And there's only probably 15 people or so that's held the position during that time. And it's surreal in a way. It was never planned for me to, it was not a goal. Okay, I'm going to be the editor of fire engineering. It was just sort of a Forrest Gump journey to the position.
I love that.
And sometimes things work out for a reason. I think a lot of the adversity stuff that happened in my career, which I'm not a pity party guy, things happen to me, but those things shape you into your beliefs and your experiences. And at some point, even though it sucked when you were going through some of them, it pays off in the long run in the fact that you actually can be that voice for other people that are in similar situations. And the biggest one, like with the revolution, and what I said the first year in the keynote, was one of the biggest forms of mental torture or abuse that a firefighter takes is the organization not letting them contribute to 100%. The organization. And if you have that type A personality, if you have that grit and you want to learn as much as you can, then, some people say it's a target that gets put on you or whatever. You're going outside of your just basic job description, and it makes people uncomfortable. And I always thought, my whole career, getting involved in Georgia smoke divers early, and having a small department that was so training focused that it really set a good foundation. And I never was one to just accept the status quo of something. But at the same time, I was never the guy that was intentionally trying to make anybody else look bad. And I tell people all the time, you end up sort of calling out laziness and incompetence by just doing what you do. It makes people nervous because it's like, whoa, why's that guy got an article published? Who is he? He's not the chief. And it's really interesting, but it's human nature. And there's a lot of people that say, one of the first rules of success is you kind of can't give a flip about some of that stuff. And so I just tried to focus on what I was doing. Yeah, a lot of things are frustrating, and you don't always get the assignment you want or get to contribute you want, but you just keep plugging away, and eventually it works out, because then you actually have a bigger voice because you've been there, and you're not just a figurehead that got put into a position. You're relatable.
What I'm trying to figure out is how we can educate our people to understand how to deliver their passion and message in a way that it can be received without pushback.
Yeah.
Delivery is everything, right? And you can have the most excitable, full of excitement. They come back from a training conference and they get shut down right away when they come home, because there's complacency, status quo, people are threatened by it, whatever it is, right? And all you do is squash that excitement and energy that could potentially push you forward. You're gonna make those guys take a back seat. And how dare you? And I say this all the time. How dare anybody have the ability to shut down somebody's passion for the fire service? Right? Shame on you, right? If you're squashing the excitement, shame on you. Get out of our way. I don't care. You're going to be there. We have them, but get out of the way. I think what we have to do, though, is there's a real fine line in how we can deliver this excitable message to the masses, because it has to. It's politics. You have to play that game in order to understand how to deliver your excitement without pushing people over the edge so you get pushed back.
Right. Yeah. And I've seen, we had a lot of changes of administration and over my career. I can't remember. It's like there was over 10, 12 different fire chiefs over my 30 years in Atlanta. And all of them had different personalities and stuff. And one that came in from the outside and wanted to make some changes, I was union president at the time, and we were talking, and he said something that stuck with me. He goes, you make changes with an X-Acto knife, not a machete.
I love that.
And so if you come in, and even as a firefighter, you come back from a conference, and I think the first thing in your message is it has to be pure, and you have to have the character that you're not doing this as an ego trip. Look at me, look what I know. Chest. I know best. I learned the latest technique, so let me show you dumbasses how to do it. If you come in that way, then everybody see. Even if the message may be the greatest message in the world, it turns people off. And I know we're all guilty of that because we're excited about it. But if you have the true intent of trying to make everybody else better as your core character and principle, then eventually you win. You win out, and you don't always win within your organization, but you do win out in the big picture. And I think that's why I've written about this. But I think that exact thing right there is the reason that we have 2 fire conferences a week across the country right now, is because the people who, and it's not 100%, but a lot of people who aren't allowed to contribute to their full potential, and that could be politics, or it could just be the structure. They're not in the right position to have the time and the resources to do it, but they look outside the box and they contribute in other areas. And I think that's good for your mental health. It's good for the fire service, because it's right now, it's where all the creativity is coming from. The creativity is not coming from the institutional fire academies and all, because they are so strapped with time and resources. It's all they can do to train the recruits to the very basic minimum, get the EMS research done, take care of all your sexual harassment and required HR classes. By the time they get that done, there's no time for other stuff. So people are hungry for it. Just look at, we had 37,000 people at FDIC.
Wild. Some
of these conferences now, I just got back from firemanship and Aurora. They had like close to 2,000.
That's what I heard.
People, and most of these people are on their own dime.
That's right.
And so and again, that has also created that same thing. Some of those things are a threat to the home person's department or whatever. Whoa, who are they? But that's one of the beauties of it's a blessing and a curse. The internet itself it's opened up the lines of communication, both good communication and bad. But you can't box people in anymore.
You cannot.
Because just like you're doing right now, you've got a platform. Right. I have even though mine is an institutional platform, I still have my own presence as an individual on social media. And obviously, I can't just say anything because, there's freedom of speech, but there's also consequences for what you say. But I am not restricted in getting a message out in any way. And most people aren't. So in that respect, it's good because I think it is a level of accountability for departments. But it does cause some heartburn and and some butthurt feelings, you know.
Well, let me tell you this from an outsider looking in, and you know, I put fire engineering on a pedestal, right? And I opened up with that because it's so important to me that the integrity and character of that title itself has to remain, and it has to remain true to what it always has stood for, right? So but what I find really exciting about you is that you're willing to go out to these other conferences. You even spoke at Firemanship. Like there's so much value in that because you guys are the institution. You always have been. And FDIC is the biggest show on the planet. And so, you know, the issue is that you're willing to step out of that umbrella and go talk at these other conferences or show a presence and be a part of it because you understand that is some of the more grassroots way in which we can reach people.
Yeah.
And I applaud you for that because I think that shows me, that demonstrates, and while I'm watching from the outside, and I watch a lot, like I really keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening in the fire service. And as I'm watching this, it is very influential that the editor-in-chief of Fire Engineering Magazine is out there hustling like everyone else and making sure that the message is remaining true. And you're doing that by showing your face and being a part of other conferences outside of the FDIC fire engineering umbrella. Bravo to you. I mean that, Chief. Yeah.
And that was, that was one of the shifts that was sort of what I wanted for us is there had been a little, I guess, it wasn't horrible, but there was just a little different philosophy in that sometimes some of these things were looked at as competition or whatever, but I totally looked at it different. And again, it goes back to that core mission. If you read the very first page of fire engineering, or the Fireman's Journal back in 1877, it's like, this is a place for communication across, for firefighters all across the country, now, international. And so if you're true to that core mission, we are about training the fire service, training and educating the fire service. If you're doing that, then you're our friend because we are all doing the same mission. And so I sort of took a different approach that it's not competition. It's we're all in the same fight to get information out there. And I'm at a conference that gets 37,000 people to attend in Indianapolis. Your 2,000 conference is not our competition. Our competition was Firehouse or F4I, and really I don't even look at those as competition.
Correct.
Really, but in the business world, because you're competing.
There is a corporate side. There's no doubt.
For exhibitors and advertisers and all. But I've always said there's enough for everybody. There's enough for everybody.
Well said.
And what I want FDIC, what I want Fire Engineering, Firefighter Nation and all, but definitely FDIC, because that's sort of the training arm, the conference is, I want to be your big brother, not your competition. And I don't mean big brother as I'm watching you, big brother. I'm talking about your true paternal, like, I want you to look at us as we're like your older brother. And it's like, hey, we're all doing this together. Hey, don't pick on my little brother. I'm going to go talk at my little brother's conference. And I don't mean that in a condescending way, but it's like, I want that relationship to be solid, that there's no adversary in there, and I've told our board members, I've told our contributors, it's like, you're not restricted on where you teach and speak, but when you're out there, you're our ambassador. I want you to be our ambassador. And it's like, again, it's we're all pushing the mission of making the fire service better. And if you got that at heart, then that's your core internal character, then it works.
How do we push the job forward? It's through unity and collaboration. I think there's, like you said, there's enough for everybody out there, and the ability for different groups, organizations, whether it's conferences, social media, influencers, training companies, whatever it is, there's enough for all of us to make sure that if we're all on par, we're pushing this job forward with a united message. And we can challenge one another to get even better. Competition is good. And understanding completely that on the backside of this, it is all business. There's a lot of business. But we can't let the corporate and business get in the way of what the true mission of what the fire service actually stands for.
Right. That's 100% right. And it's one of those, it's the age-old deal. You have to have resources and able to deliver your programs. So you can't be mad at somebody for bringing in revenue that allows the system to work. It's like, but you have a moral responsibility to do good with those resources. And that's the difference. There's companies that are just 100% there for their own purpose.
Yeah, for their own gain, profit-driven, 100%.
But we are, it is our mission to train the fire service and to put on the greatest show in the world where the entire fire service comes together, because it's like you can't get that at these other smaller conferences. You get great training, you can get great education, you can have great networking, but you don't have the infrastructure and the entire fire service where you can go and talk to the guy that designs the tiller cab on your favorite. You 100%. Can talk to the guy that welds the ladders. You can talk to the guy that engineered the thermal imaging cameras, and you can walk up to that guy and go, "Hey, I got an idea." and that's right. That's one of my favorite things about FDIC is seeing the connections that are made.
Yes.
And I love making those connections. Like I'll be talking to somebody and they're like, "Man, I've been wanting to work on this." And I'm like, "You should talk to so-and-so because they've already got about 5 years in that." And these people don't know each other. And then the next thing you know, they have a business. And you're like, man, that little introduction created something that made the fire service better. So it's exciting. It's 100% exciting. I love it all. It's
exciting, and we're in exciting times. There's no doubt. I want to ask you this. I want to pivot just a little bit. Your upbringing, your background in the fire service, right? I know you retired out of Atlanta, Georgia as a battalion chief, and we chatted for a few minutes before we hit the record button. You were 18 years in the battalion chief position, which is really interesting in my eyes too, because there's longevity within one position that allowed you. Because I know you're not a complacency status quo guy. You already told me that, but I already know that because of where you are today in life in position with fire engineering. That had to be a lot of fun, I think, to be able to really manage a position and understand the position well. I mean, a lot of guys come through the system 1 or 2 years to moving on, 1 or 2 years to moving on. But with longevity in one spot, man, so much good can come from that.
Yeah,
no?
I think it takes about 4 years before you really have your feet under you and you understand the position. And then it takes another couple of years to really get good at it.
Yeah.
And of course, there's, the battalion chief role is it's that part admin, part tactical role, and everybody hates the admin part of it. But you're in the middle. You are the very middle. You're in between headquarters and the guys, but you're still living with the guys and running calls with the guys. And so it's a very difficult position, but it is absolutely, I enjoyed it. I was fortunate enough to, my first assignment was, on the outer ring of downtown. I was in the 2nd Battalion, but it was where a majority of the fires were. And they were, 1-2 story residences for the most part, every now and then a commercial structure. But like that first year, I was like, man, I'm going to track all the fires and I'm going to write a little diary of every fire I go to. Right. So like the first fire, I know that I went to like around 70 fires, and that's just crazy when you think you only work 120 shifts.
That's right.
And so I was either first in or the second in chief on like 70 something fires. And it really, with all my training background and all that, and I was already kind of an incident command nerd, I guess, in a way, is like I really enjoyed the structure, even at a bigger level. But you got to make mistakes and make adjustments and make mistakes and make adjustments versus just going to a training class and having that 2 or 3 fires a year. Hell, by the time you have your next fire, you've forgotten your mistakes. So like every shift, every other shift, you were adjusting and getting better and having a better system. And at the same time, I'm involved in the FSRI research, and I'm getting to like experiment with that in the field and like, hey, let's do this. And that's where we got into like cutting the roof, but not opening it until we know the line is in place and stuff. So I got to see it actually work. And so, yeah, it was a blast. Then I quit keeping track and of course, you know, went on to different assignments, did special operations, I did a year in community risk reduction in the office, and then came back out into the field. So I had a pretty good view of a lot of different territories. I spent about 6 years in Midtown, which is all high rises and like tenement boarding houses and things like that, where you got like a 300-foot stretch down a narrow alley to get up a fire escape to get to the fourth floor of some apartment. So it's a very, you know, Atlanta has become like the Hollywood of the East.
It really
like
has.
Filming, and it's because of the architecture and the lay of the land. You can go to this neighborhood and look like you're in LA. You can go to this neighborhood and look like you're in Portland, Oregon. You can go to this neighborhood and look like you're in South Florida. There's just a hodgepodge of construction and it really makes for a great filming location. Burt Reynolds knew what he was doing when he filmed Smokey and the Bandit.
Smokey and the Bandit, yeah, right, exactly. Yes, sir. I love that. I got to think, like, diversity, though, man. That, you know, to be able to be in one position, the battalion chief position like you are, there's a couple things I want to hit on with that with you. I want to push you a little bit on that. One, it's, you know, your upbringing in the fire service, being a part of some outside studies, seeing things happen, part of the training network, all of that, right? Surrounding yourself with the outside and understanding what's happening outside the borders or zip code of Atlanta. But putting that all together, having the adversity of different first dues, different areas, when you have 18 years in that one position, you can really become well-rounded in your approach, right?
Yeah.
That matters. Because it goes not just to the tactical considerations, the operational considerations on the fireground, but also how to manage people,
right?
Manage different situations and so on. So I would agree with you. A good friend of mine said it's about 3 years for him when he's a captain. He said 3 years, I get my legs under me. But he goes, anything less than that, he goes, you're not there yet.
No.
And so that had to be a fun spot for you. The other thing about that too, and I talk about this a lot, is having a seat at the table. When you're when you're a fireman, company officer, until you can get a seat at the table where you can, sometimes we can't make a difference or make an impact without actually having the collar brass on.
Right.
And we need solid officers and firefighters to promote and come up through the system.
100%. Yep.
And I want to explore that with you a little bit, because I know that I have to believe that you feel very much the same way I do when it comes to, you know, we need those hard-hitting guys and girls to move up through the ranks so that they can represent that culture shift, that, you know, cradle of revolution. We need chiefs in a command staff to allow it to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was never against the 30-year driver or the senior guy.
No,
like
I think
you need those. You need those
Absolutely.
too. But you don't need everybody in that. Everybody can't be in that role. That's a small percentage, and those are like the jewels of your organization. And like I had like the scene when I was a captain on an engine. I was only a captain for 4 years, which it was good. It was, luckily I had time before I came to Atlanta that I had a really good foundation. So even though I got promoted early in my Atlanta career, in my fire service career, it really wasn't that early. You know, it was 10, 11 years in Atlanta, but it was really almost 20 years total, you know. But I had like the senior driver, was my driver, and he came to my station. We swapped a guy. It just worked out where I had a young driver that wanted to be at the station this guy was at, and this guy was kind of burnt out where he was, and he came over. And it was just phenomenal. I mean, the guy retired a driver, a few years after I got promoted. But you need those people. But yes, I think it's the societal whole leadership crisis that we've gone through, and people didn't see good examples, or there were far and few between. And they were like, man, if I take that, it is going to be a fight. I'm going to be banging my head against the wall. And they're right. But that's part of the struggle and the sacrifice of moving up is if you don't do it, then it's going to fall off even further. And so you get one, and then you get another one to come. And I saw that there were some of our best captains that I would push. I'd be like, man, you got to do the battalion chief process. And our process was sort of like all over the place. Like I actually took a test and got on a list and all that. Even though it's an appointment, they still had a process, an interview, 3-hour in basket where you actually still had to write with a pencil all your stuff. And I tell you what, you talk about a shock after being on the computer all the time and then going to that, you don't realize it's painful to write. You get a dent in your finger that you've forgotten about since like high school.
That's 100% right.
And you're like breaking pencils and it's hard to write something out. It's a physical act. It's almost like not working out for years. And then, so I'm like, my hands all cramping up and stuff. So that was a 3-hour in basket. Then we had a couple other little pieces of the process and an interview. But in some chiefs came in and they were just like, okay, you're a battalion chief. It's like Oprah. You're a battalion chief. You're a battalion chief.
Handing them out.
But there were a lot of really good captains that got offered and turned it down. And, the system's always jacked us like, okay, you're going to take a higher role, but you're going to lose money. You're going to have a higher salary, but you're going to bring home less.
There's always a trade-off.
You're not getting your overtime. You're not getting your automatic overtime. You're not getting your holiday pay. And we got comp time. The guys got 10, 12-hour holidays of pay.
Sure.
And then if you worked it, you got time and a half or double time, whatever. And but I always enjoyed the comp time because I was involved in other stuff and needed the time off. But yeah, it's a trade-off. And after I left, some of those people that I had really been pushing ended up taking it. And it was, that was a huge proud moment for me is okay, they took it, but everything's timing. The administration changed, the new chief came in, and it was no longer the witch hunt, we're after you. And they're actually letting some of those people contribute in ways that are non-traditional, my good friend Brent that runs the smoke divers and helps with FDIC, hell, he's involved in the staffing program and the telestaff, and he's taught them how to actually use it, but beforehand it was like, okay, you're not the IT person. You're not allowed to see this. Right. So yeah, that collaboration, it just makes everybody better. And guess what?
It does.
It makes him feel like he's contributing.
He's part of it. He's got buy-in.
He is. And there's still problems. There's always problems in every organization.
Everywhere.
But you got to let your people, there's so much untapped energy in most organizations that are having trouble. The answers are there for the most part. It's just like opening the door and let them go. Let them freaking do their thing,
Well, letting your people work takes confidence in yourself, in your own skills and abilities. And we have a lot of leaders that lack their own confidence because they lack the experience and knowledge. And so they're never going to let their people shine.
Yeah.
If they're worried about having to answer for that.
Get back in there. Get back in.
Right?
Get back in your box.
100%.
Who is this guy? He's a station captain. What does he know about computers? You find out, Bernasini told me. Bernasini used to tell these stories all the time, but he was like, we were talking about this, 15 years ago. And he was telling me, I can't remember their names, but there was 2 brothers that were captains, I think, in Phoenix. And he said the Phoenix Fire Department made those guys millionaires. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, we treated them like shit. They were at every recruit class on their own time. They were doing this. And he said they just got beat back into their box. He goes, little did they know they were commercial electricians, and now they they left the fire service and put their energy and efforts into their electrical business and became gazillionaires. And it was strictly out of the adversity of not being able to contribute.
Right.
Right.
Well said. Very well said. Well, I want to say this. I mean, conversations with Chief Brunacini, your upbringing in fire engineering in the national stage, right? I mean, to be able to get to where you are today as the editor-in-chief of Fire Engineering magazine, there's a long, storied history there of getting to that position. It's not like you wake up one night and you find yourself in that spot.
Yep.
So where did you find fire engineering, or where did you find FDIC that got your road started to understand there was more than just the zip code you were running in?
So probably one of my biggest mentors of all time was Scott Millsap. He ran the Georgia Smoke Diver program, and he was a captain in the Dalton Fire Department up in North Georgia. I think they're five station department, decent sized little North Georgia city.
Right.
And he was just this larger than life, charismatic guy, but he was just all about the training, the quality, leadership. And he was about 10 years older than me, but we hit it off. I took the smoke diver class, and of course he ran it, and it was just like, oh my God. Then I came back and started teaching. I ended up like, we were like the roommates at the hotel. And
sure.
And I always hung around as a young firefighter. I always liked hanging around the older folks. And it wasn't that I didn't like the younger folks, is I was so curious.
Yes.
That I was just a sponge, and it turned into friendships. It wasn't just a mentor, whatever. It was like, this guy was like my buddy, it's like phone calls, go on trips, go to the bar, have a beer. It was that kind of, relationship. And he had that with a lot of people, but he was involved as a training officer. He went to FDIC when it was in Cincinnati, and he taught, and he was 100% fire. He was hazmat. He was a paramedic. He was everything. And he was involved in that. So when FDIC moved to Indy, he was close with Bill Manning, who was the editor.
Sure.
And was part of that group that came up with the idea for hands-on training instead of just a conference and a demo. And so him, Bob Pressler, Glenn Corbett, there was a group of them, and they came up with, they called it Hot Tuesday. And it was really like a lot of these conferences now. It was training in the parking lot.
Right.
It was flowing water. It was Ciampo throwing ladders up against the side of the building with his ground ladder class. We did a lot of technical rescue because Scott had his own company that did industrial and fire brigade training. So we did rope, confined space, and all that stuff. So we got invited to come and be an instructor in that. And so we did that the first couple of years. It was in the parking lot. Then it expanded to where we were going out to acquired structures and fire academies. And then we were doing that. And then we had the huge mill fire in Georgia, in Atlanta. And that's where Matt Mosley hung from the rope and rescued the guy off the crane. So I was union president then. It was really before social media, but it got picked up on every news station around the country. And Matt was immediately thrust into, the hero of all times. And I was the union president. So we used that as leverage to get a lot of things done that were festering in Atlanta. And it was really funny. Scott gave the keynote at FDIC. I think I could be off a year, but I want to say it was like 98 or 99. And then that happened. And then Bill Manning asked me, he called Scott and he's like, hey, who's the guy in Atlanta? Can he write us an article about it?
Right.
So my first article was about that mill fire and about the rescue. It was 2 articles in one edition. And then Manning said, I want you and Matt to keynote. FDIC. Cool. So the keynotes back then, they're 15, 20 minutes now. Back then they were an hour. So it was the first time ever, and Matt and I put together a multimedia keynote that had.
And what year was this, Chief?
99 or 2000, somewhere in there. And I was a lieutenant. He was a firefighter, and it was called Marketing the Mission. And it was what we did before the incident as the union and PR and community groups, and then what we did after to make it work. And what we got out of that incident was all new fire apparatus over a 2-year period on a lease purchase. We got all new breathing apparatus. We got a raise. We got all this stuff done that we had been fighting to do for the last 7 years. And in a blink, one incident changed it all. I'd been union president for a couple of years, and the mayor wouldn't even talk to us. The fire chief wouldn't even acknowledge us. And in one meeting, we got all of that done in less than an hour.
National spotlight. So you thrust it into the national spotlight.
So then that was really the big kickoff of it.
Did you know what FDIC was though? Like, were you
not before that?
Not before that. Okay.
And then I taught for 3 or 4 or 5 years. Unfortunately, Scott passed away over 20 something years ago. But he was part of the group that after Pressler left, they put a group of 5 together to not have all their eggs in one basket. And it was John O'Connell, Mike Nasta, Rick Fritz, Scott Millsap, myself, and Brent Hollander. And Brent and I were like, I was brought in as like the logistics guy, and Brent was brought in as a safety guy. And then the lead was going to rotate around. Well, Scott died, and it never really happened that way. But I ended up for the next 20 years, like running the hands-on training, logistics. And then that turned in, after Manning left and then Bobby came, then it became a little bit more about helping pick the classes. And, of course, at the same time, I'm writing articles all along. I'd usually have 2 or 3 a year, that I would write. And I was teaching outside of at Fools events and union conferences.
But meanwhile, this whole thing is scaling. I mean, this is, these are the beginning days of it, basically.
Yeah,
so
it went from a 10, 12,000 person event to a 15 to a 20. Now we're getting close to
it's wild
30. Yeah, so it has. We're busting at the seams there.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing to have. And I think with the solid message that is coming forth from you and everyone else that supports the mission, I mean, it's a unified front. It's fun to watch. And it certainly is a new day for fire engineering, which is great. I want to ask you, though, do you remember when you did that keynote your first exposure, do you remember coming back from that experience and what that meant to you? Like, there had to be some type of like, whoa, there's buy-in here. Like, I want to do more of this. I want to be a part of something like this.
Yeah, it was interesting because it was still pretty brutal at the fire department, and our chief flew up to see it, and we never mentioned him. He was out of town when all of the incident happened, and we didn't say anything bad about him. We didn't say anything good about him. He was totally omitted, and a friend of mine actually was sitting right beside him, and as we're getting a standing ovation, I mean, this was a production. Like, we walked out in the crowd, we had music going, we had the helicopter footage. I mean, it was a true like motivational production, and everybody's on their feet. If they'd have had pistols, they would have been shooting them in the air, and they're clapping. And the guy I knew nudged my fire chief, and he goes, "Man, that was great." He goes, "Wasn't that great?" And he had his arms folded like this, and he goes,
I can only imagine.
He goes, "Once you've seen one presentation, you've seen them all." And he turned around and walked out and flew back home. And
sums it all up right there.
Yeah. And he didn't get his recognition. And ironically, he's since passed away. And we actually became, after he retired, and then I wasn't union president, we'd see each other at some functions, and actually very cordial, and we would laugh about, hey, I bet they wish they had us back, now.
Yeah.
And but during that, when it was happening, Matt was getting requests to go all over the country. Like they flew him out to Disney. They gave him the picture of Mickey Mouse looking up to the firefighter, which is the only time Mickey Mouse ever looks up. And I remember they wanted him in Alabama for something. I want to say it was Southeastern Fire Chiefs or whatever. But the fire chief they were going to present Matt a plaque. And the only way he would allow Matt to go is if they also brought the fire chief and gave the fire chief a plaque too. And we used to laugh about that. We were like, holy shit, man. Like this guy was handed a golden egg. Like
I was on vacation.
Oh my gosh. Egos eat brains, as they say.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, that's pretty wild. I mean, what an introduction for sure. Do you still have that presentation?
Yeah, on VHS.
You should share. We should digitalize that. I would love to see that.
I may have put it on disc, but it's an hour long. Okay. It's an hour long, so we need to get that up on YouTube.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. I think it would be great. That's pretty wild. I'm just always interested because what this has become for you, it's become, I mean, obviously firefighting was always, a lifestyle thing for you. I think anybody that goes all in like we do, it's a lifestyle, right? A lot of what our lives surrounds, other than Georgia football for you and your kids, right? It's the fire service. Yep. And we always, the guys and girls that are so into it, it becomes a lifestyle. And I'm always intrigued by the names of the people that I read their articles and learned about growing up through the fire service myself. And you've mentioned so many incredible names that were a part of your process also. Mm-hmm. And I just think about their contributions, and they were so far ahead of, their time, if you will. Mm-hmm. Like today now more than ever, we have the ability to share that message on so many different platforms. We can scream it from so many mountaintops. Yep. Back then it was 100 times harder to share the good word.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, that's a blessing and a curse too, because now anybody can write and post something on social media. And it's like, you really have to be careful and vet and look at the background, because it's easy. And even with like the safety culture, the revolution, it's easy to jump on those. Those are high emotion topics that, there's probably a lot of people that heard the revolution speech that don't really understand what it was about. They're just like, hell yeah, let's go do it. As a matter of fact, I don't know who it was, but I got a call from somebody in the area, and they said, hey, one of the local firefighters just got in trouble for intentionally disobeying a rule that came out. When they brought him in and interviewed him and said, why did you do this? And I don't even know what it was. But it was a fireground rule or something. And he goes, because I heard David Rhodes' speech, and he said that we needed to be loyal, disobedient, and be a revolution. And so I'm intentionally ignoring this rule. And I'm like, I didn't say that. So people interpret things. But that whole revolution speech was to tell everybody who is so passionate and out there training that you're doing an awesome job and keep doing what you're doing, but you got to do more, because you're just scratching the surface in a small area. If you want to make change, you also have to be involved over here in this non-sexy process of NFPA standard writing and curriculum writing. And it's boring. But that drives the change faster than you talking to a couple of hundred people a year at conferences. And so I'm not saying stop. I'm just saying you got to do more. And the revolution is, don't look at NFPA and don't look at IFSTA and all these other organizations as the boogeyman. Look at them as an opportunity. And I intentionally used the word infiltrate. I said, you need to infiltrate these organizations because I knew that would catch your attention. But what I'm really saying is you need to participate.
Yes.
And that's huge. And not everybody has the resources and all, but everybody has the resources to comment on the public comment. And if we all did that, if everybody who has their own fire conference and teaches at fire conferences and is passionate about it, took the time to read what was going on and comment, we could make the changes that are needed. And that was the message there, not just be, a reckless. And I had an evaluation some chief sent in. It says, it is unfortunate that Chief Rhodes has embraced the reckless non-rule following. And I'm like, you're not listening to what I'm saying.
That's right.
That was your perception. And what happened is, as soon as our keynoter came out with the cowboy message in his title, Scott,
right,
that person shut down because he heard the word. And again, it was the word of, like, it was to grab your attention, shock and awe, but listen to the message, because it's much deeper than just that. So
yeah. Well, you say infiltrate, and I love that, because that goes back to the conversation we just had about having a seat at the table, right?
Yeah.
You can, with what's happening today, there are so many ways in which you can be heard, and there are so many ways in which loyal disobedience comes with understanding it takes work. It's not just a rogue firemanship. This is a lot more packaged up under a very excitable title, if you will. And so people have to understand, though, that there's work to be done, but it's work.
You can't just bitch.
That's right.
And I mean, it's easy, and it gets you a lot of attention on social media. If you're, this,
right.
But what's the solution? And I always hated the old cliche, if you're going to bring a problem, bring a solution. But it's like, that's the creativity. You got to be thinking about that. And I love these bottom up movements that are like, they're challenging, and I don't know if they're right or wrong, but like, they're challenging 2 in, 2 out. They're challenging the search methods, the rescue surveys, giving us data. And it's like, these are guys. This isn't some organization that has federal funding that is, but guess what? It's creeping into the system now. It's like, I met with Craig at UL the other day, and he gave me the whole NARIS rundown, and those questions are in there now. So you're going to be answering, like, where did you find the victim? What unit were you assigned to? That, all of that stuff is going to be part of the system, and that's how we improve and change. RIT was a bottom-up movement. I used that in my speech. That was like Mike Lombardo and those guys pushing that out of experience. It didn't come from the top down. And that's a tough, it's a fight, but it's a worthy fight, and there's scars and there's bodies along the way, but you just can't, you just have to be careful not to, like, martyr yourself over something within your own organization. And that's hard for a passionate person, trust me.
Yeah. But I'll tell you, we talk from the top down, bottom up. When it comes from the bottom, man, that's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's exciting.
And you got to have, that's why you said it earlier, you got to have the experienced people promote. And I've always said, by the time you get up into a position to really make some big changes, unfortunately, you start making the changes that were needed when you were in that other position 10 years ago, but things have changed. And so you really have to build that communication and network and listen to those people on the ground, because you're fixing an old problem isn't going to fix the real current problem.
That's
right. And that's tough. That's tough in any business, but you just have to listen to your folks and strike that balance and let them participate. And there's so many workarounds. That's the sad part, is there's a lot of great organizational people in bad organizations, and they have to do workarounds. And so now you're putting a guy in a situation, like our buddy Danny Dwyer. He has to make a moral decision. Do I grab this lady that I can see and pull her out? And then you saw what happened, with that. Now the next person comes along, and they're faced with that situation, and they're like, do I want to go through what Danny Dwyer went through? And so
that's it.
And you can't take the moral position out of it. You can train to procedure, but not everything fits the procedure. And then that's when the moral fortitude comes in, and you do what you think you need to do, and your organization needs to back you up when that happens.
Yeah, there's so much to that. There's so much to that. Something I want to ask you. I have a couple clips that I want to play, and I just want to go deep on it. And it kind of it certainly parallels what we're talking about here. With fire engineering and where you are today, we talk about the like-mindedness all the time, and I talk about it a lot too, and you did as well. And this was a clip that stood out to me, and really spoke to me from your keynote, where you're talking about like-mindedness, but we can't get lost in that echo chamber, and that we need to be challenged by, and so what we're talking about from the bottom up and things like that, when you're instituting change or planting a flag, you're going to have adversity and pushback against you always. And so it's how you move forward with that. We can't get lost in an echo chamber of people just cheering you on without being able to take pause and at least listen to some of the critique or criticism coming back. And so I just want to play this clip, and then I want to see, I'd love to just go down that road with you real quick. Here we go.
Why they attend FDIC or other local conferences, they often say, it's so great to be around like-minded people. I don't believe they really think through their words. An entire culture built around like-mindedness is what led to the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster. We all need to constantly challenge our cognitive bias. Like-minded people don't always challenge us. And if that's all we associate with, it can be dangerous. I hope what is meant when someone says that about FDIC is they love being somewhere where everyone has the same passion to learn, share information, not a place where everyone thinks alike. A place where the fire service mission to serve the community is always more important than our personal wants.
I love that.
I said that.
I absolutely.
That's me.
That was you, buddy. I'm telling you, Chief. I'll tell you, I just, there's so much in that message. We talk about like-mindedness. We go to conferences. We want to surround ourselves with like-minded people. And I think it's because people are obviously looking for more and starving for it because they're not getting it at home.
Yeah.
But we can't get lost in the message of surrounding ourselves with like-minded people who share the same thoughts and beliefs, and all they do is cheer you on. And then when you do get some pushback, it's not received with any pause. You push back against that, and it becomes polluted. I don't know.
Yeah.
And
it's a societal thing too. It's in politics. It's in it's in everything. It's like, it's hard to carry on a conversation and have a civil conversation with two people on opposite spectrums. And always, there were some people at work. There was a lady that was our PIO for a while, and politically, we are 100% opposite in our views. She was one of my favorite people to go to lunch with because she was not an activist. She was not waving a banner. She could truly explain why she thought these policies and these things were better. And 9 times out of 10, it opened my eyes to say, you know what? You actually got a point there. But then I would say, but the unintended consequences is this. And she would go, I never thought about that. But we were not mad at each other. And I don't give 2 flips of who she votes for. And she didn't give 2 flips about who I voted for. But it's hard to have those conversations now. And back into the fire service, because we damn sure don't want to go down the political road. In the fire service, let's look at searching without a hose line.
Right.
All right. When some people hear that, all they can think about is danger, reckless. I'm not going to allow this to happen. And they don't go any further. All right. On the other side of that, people hear that and they think you're just supposed to get on the scene and start jumping in windows and Crazy. So if you sit down and talk about it, you find out that searching without a hose line doesn't mean that there's not a hose line all the time. I mean, everything's situational, but it means that the search team doesn't have a hose line. Of course you want a hose line in the building at the right place, but all of these things can be talked about and explained, and they can be done, and the risk can be managed in such a way that it works.
Yes.
Is there risk with it? Absolutely. But you can't slow yourself down to the point that you remove all risk, because you'll never get anything done. You know, it's the let's do a 360. Oh, it changed. Let's do another 360. Oh, something else has changed. Let's do another 360. You got to go. You got to move. And the rescue survey is telling us there is a 70, and the numbers change because you get more data, but there's like a 76, 78 chance of the victim surviving if the victim is pulled out within the first 4 to 5 minutes the first unit arrival.
That's right.
That right there tells us, okay, we've got to change our tactics. We have to change something. We went so far on, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do that. Nobody's saying we need to stop doing those things, but maybe it's just like incident command. Okay, the first unit establishes command, but it's a mobile command. You're engaged in the action. You build the system as the resources get there. So
that's
maybe in a 1,200 square foot house on a slab, 3 bedrooms, that based on what we see in the conditions, maybe it's okay to jump in that window first without a line. Maybe it's okay to pass that duty to the next unit and all. And there's no absolutes. There's zero absolutes. And a lot of people think in absolutes, and they want the absolute answer, and they want you to operate exactly the same way every time. So the part that we're lacking is our folks don't have great training in building construction. We've pointed out over the last 10 years that they didn't know fire dynamics, and fire behavior was a lost thing because our gear and our breathing apparatus was so good it didn't matter because we just overpowered the scene. Well, now we got to go back to thinking about those things. And I can pop in a room as the first due unit with 3 people, or 2 people, if that's what I got. And I know this situation, and the reports say, the building looks horrible. It looks like, it's pretty much fully involved, except for that one window right there. And there's cars in the driveway. There's toys in the yard. It's 2:00 in the morning. I can pop that window and close that door and be just as safe in that space
100%.
as I can with 2 or 3 hose lines in. I'm only going to be in there for a minute, 2 minutes, and I'm clearing that one place that there may be a potential for somebody to be there. If that's all
there's
I can
an opportunity,
get,
we take
if
it.
that's all I can get, that's all I can get. Maybe the other ones is that I'm only, because of the conditions, I'm only able to pop in that window and scan with a tick. Maybe I can't get in there because I don't have the line, and the fire's coming out to the point where I can't get to the door. I can scan with a tick and at least know what we have, And so I think we hit the easy button, because training people to have good decision-making skills without them getting it through the experience of multiple fires and, like I said earlier, like going to a fire, making a mistake, fixing it on the next one the next week or whatever.
Yes.
If you're just doing training and you're not getting the hands-on with real incidents, then you've got to incorporate a higher level of training that includes live fire acquired structures, burned buildings, computer simulations. You've got to build this part, the decision-making part, because the people that I know that are the real operators in the fire service, they are not reckless. Correct. They get a reputation by some individuals that they're reckless because those individuals don't understand what they're doing. but they're actually at the highest level of their game. They're operators, they're freaking warriors, and they are not trying to commit suicide. They can go further and they can be the most aggressive because they know how to manage the risk inside that structure. Now, the problem is somebody without that experience sees them doing something and they don't have that knowledge and they try to emulate it, they get themselves in trouble. So that's where the training comes in. So we got to be masters of building construction. We got to be masters of fire behavior and fire dynamics, and we got to be masters of search technique. My editorial next month is about this, and so it's like if you don't have searching without a line, vent enter search, if you don't have those in your tool bag for residential, I mean, searching a grocery store is different. Searching a high rise is different. Searching a big box is different. But the majority of our victims are in houses. So we need a lot of options for our residential search, apartments, houses, duplexes. And if we don't have those, if all we have is left and right through the front door, we're not going to be successful. We have to have these other methods, and they can be done safely to the risk management level. Nothing's safe. Nothing is safe. Driving to the call, non-emergency is not safe. So just take that out. You're not going to prevent all injuries. You're not going to ever prevent all deaths. It's like FDIC. We have probably 10, 15 injuries a year during hot. And that was enough. Somebody made some big deal about, somebody got hurt during hot. So I check into this. It's a cut hand. It's a sprained ankle. It's heat. Yes. It's a little heat exhaustion and all. And I'm like, if that's not happening, then you're not training.
We're doing it wrong. That's right. We're doing
it wrong. And I'm not
bragging
that we should be hurting people.
No, that's reality.
It's reality, Chief. Because I'm teaching a class with 55 students, and the only prerequisite is that you're a firefighter. Okay. So I've got a 400-pound guy who's trying to learn something, and I've got and is 45 years old, and I got a 120-pound guy that can run 8 marathons in one day, and I'm trying to teach a class. There are going to be sprains, strains, and cuts and scrapes, and you prevent as much as you can, but there is a cost of doing business, and it's not an excuse. It's just reality. And for somebody to try to say that it's not acceptable at all, you want to look and see what happened and said, oh, okay, the guy cut his hand because he didn't have his glove on. We should have caught that he didn't have his glove on and stopped him. Yes, that's a mistake. That is a preventable injury. But a guy's advancing a hose and jacks his knee or his ankle. I mean, what do you do? And then you go to the other side of that too. I mean, it's scary as hell, but you're doing a recruit class and somebody has a pre-existing condition and they have an aneurysm and they die in a class. That doesn't mean you stop doing live fire.
That's right.
So you got to investigate these things, and I applaud these guys. Man, I've really got to know the search culture guy, Justin McWilliams, and I've seen him go from, a couple of years ago talking about some stuff to now he's like dialed it in, and he's got percentages, X% are found in the bedroom. So, and he's asking, why do we do this? Why aren't we doing this instead of this? He's not telling you what to do. He's asking a question to make you think, and that's the kind of guys I really like,
Let me play this clip. It goes right in line with it, and then I want to talk about this. I want to dive in with this even further.
The risk-averse culture advocates was well-intended. No one can say they're against preventing line-of-duty deaths. But those who accept that there are always risks when you work in environments that we do and hold true to the core mission of saving lives know that you can't eliminate and prevent them all. We're busy banning firefighters from the roof. We're banning firefighters from entering windows. We're banning firefighters from searching without dragging the boat anchor. Much of this is an emotional overreaction to a perception, but not facts. It's like being afraid to fly because you know about previous crashes, but not thinking twice about taking a trip in a car. Flying is still the safest form of transportation. If we were notified of every single fatal car accident, we would get 3,700 notifications a day. We remember horrific events more than we do everyday events and the behaviors that cause us the most harm.
Man, I'm telling you, Chief, like, some strong stuff because, a couple things. One, you didn't shy away from anything. You went at it. You showed fires where we failed.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about experiences of falling down on the mission for the public. You shared those stories during this keynote. And then you hold us all accountable for the mission. And I think that something that's popped up recently, and we talked about it before we hit record, and I just wanted to mention it. And this is where we started going with this conversation, is this safety culture that is now being promoted hand in hand again. And you go all the way back to Ray McCormack's keynote years ago, where he talked about we need a culture of extinguishment, not a culture of safety, right? And that was really kind of a pivotal defining moment, I think, in the American Fire Service, that when Ray stood up and said that, it really got the conversation going. And I know he got tremendous pushback on it, but it also painted a realistic picture that we're going down the wrong road here. And we can't broad stroke. We can't broad stroke this. Like you said before, if you only have left or right search on a residential fire, you're doing it wrong. You're doing a disservice, and you're not following through on the mission of what we guaranteed the public, that unconditional belief that we're coming for you. If you can't throw a portable ladder and search a building or search a window and allow your people to do that because your broad stroke policy is that we're a safety culture and we're going to do everything to limit the amount of risk we put our own people at, there's a problem here. There's a problem.
100%.
I would love to hear just a little bit more from you. I mean, obviously, people can go on YouTube and watch your videos and they can see the keynotes and so on, but the amount of passion that was coming through you on that stage, I mean, you were feeling it.
Yeah. I mean, it's all from the heart.
Yes.
You have to write it. Bobby was a memorizer. Bobby would memorize his speeches. And of course, we've got the prompters and a printed copy in case everything falls. But like, Bobby, a lot of people don't know, Bobby actually majored in drama in college.
Yes.
And so like that was his deal. Like he was a performer. He was very passionate about it wasn't that he was fake. He wasn't faking anything, but he memorized and stuff. And so it's easier for me just to get up and talk. But I'm always afraid I'll have that blank moment and I'm like, oh, where am I at? Because I'll get off on some tangent. So like I do have to write that out as a speech to keep myself on track. But yeah, I probably write and rewrite that thing like 15 times. It always starts out and it's 45 minutes and then it's like, what do I cut? And then it just keeps getting smaller and smaller to the key points. But
you could have made it vanilla.
Yeah.
Like you could have played it safe. You could have taken a safe road and said, like, I'm not going to push these issues. I know they're hot topics in the fire service, but I'll mention it, but we're going to move on.
Yeah.
You kind of doubled down on some of your
message.
I
think that's my role is to make you think and challenge your thought. And if you notice, like, it would have been easy to throw all these folks that created the life safety initiatives, which kind of was the precipice of like the beginning of some of this stuff, and people took their own interpretations and all. It's like, I know that those people did not see the unintended consequences of how some people took that. And so I don't want to, slam those people. And there are probably people out there that need to be slammed because they just don't get it. And it's just, okay, we're not doing this or we're not doing that. But for the most part, again, back to those civil conversations is like, here's the thought process. Here's where we are. And you got to look at when some of that stuff was put out in time. What were the fatality rates and what was happening? And we have to own some of that as the firefighters, because when we tolerate, when those smart warrior guys that I'm talking about tolerate the guy just jumping in the window and doing crazy shit, that's their own, they're satisfying their own ego. That they're not doing that for a victim or for they can hide behind that, just as that chief can hide behind the safety piece. And so my job is to bring to light all of it. Yes, there is a culture of safety where guys, they won't let us do our job. There's also a culture of recklessness where people are doing stupid shit. But there is also a big culture of doing it right and not being allowed to use their $25,000 worth of gear in the way that it was intended to do. And some of it is because of that percentage of reckless, and some of it is because of that percentage of safety. So it's like everything. The pendulum went too far. Okay. Yep. I personally think it's moving back.
I agree with you.
So what's the danger? Everybody's for it moving back, right? Oh yes, we're got, people know what VES is now. They know what the danger is. It moves too far and it goes back to the other side. And where we want it is right in the middle. We want it right in the middle. We want people highly trained that can make decisions, that can use their gear to the best, because that's what the public expects. And they have laid the example right out in front of us. Uvalde, Texas. Okay.
Yes.
If you look, and Scott Thompson brought this up in his keynote, if you look at the change in tactics from school shootings, from call it in on the radio, assemble your resources, which is, SWAT team, medics, blah, blah, blah. You're 15, 20 minutes in now, sometimes longer. Then you create an IAP, you get the building blueprints, and you do that. Isn't that where we are right now with the fire service in a lot of places? It's like, we got to do the 360. We got to have a water supply. We got to have a hose. We got to have a backup line. We got to do this. And I've written about it before. Meanwhile, while you're doing all that, the police officer walks up in 100% polyester, walks in the house, and guides Miss Smith out.
Yep.
And that's embarrassing.
Yep. 100%.
So in Uvalde, they've arrested the police chief and the officer on the scene and charged them with child neglect, okay, for not taking action. And I bet, I haven't done it, I hope maybe this will spur somebody to do it. Let's look at all the oaths in the fire service. When you get your recruit school, you raise your hand. Let's look at those oaths and see what the wording is in there, because usually there's something in there about protecting the public and all. And so you're swearing an oath to do that. If you take that part away, and again, we're not talking about doing away with rules and doing away with policies and all. We're just talking about being able to use common sense and training and do it properly. If we take that away, we're going to be in the same situation as the school shooting. Now what's the tactic? The first officer on the scene, get in the building and engage. All right. So if we get there and we know there's a space that we can search, we got to search that space. We got to get in there and search that space quickly. If that means going through a window, if that means closing a door, whatever that means, there's a balance. We got to figure out how we can do that. And that's the difficult part. And it'll take a lot of training. It'll take a lot of decision making. It'll take a lot of growing up on the firefighter side, but it'll take a lot of coordination on the management side. But there are places doing it right. There are places doing it right now.
Yeah, it's just another day.
And, it's funny talking to Scott Thompson, like he's got the model, and I don't know it exact, but like he started, they do EMS and fire, and he was having a hard time, like people crossing over and stuff. And so he put in a system to where he just hired paramedics. You're still a part of the fire department, but your job is you're a paramedic on the ambulance. You don't ride the fire truck. They have a pathway for you to ride the fire truck if you want to take that, but you don't have to. In addition to that, if you're assigned to the truck, you're assigned to the truck. If you're assigned to the engine, you're assigned to the engine. They hire for position. But now you have a crew. You want to go back to decision making. How hard is it for a guy to make a decision? I'm a captain on a ladder or on an engine, and I'm working with a different set of guys almost every day because we're filling this guy in over here and we're filling that guy in over here. There is a lot to be said for that intuition, that unspoken communication and all. And it's not a perfect world, so you can't work with the exact same guys every time. But the more disruptive your system is built to be, then the higher risk. And, the same chief is yelling safety, 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 but then they're splitting your crew up every shift and running you short and hiring people without a standard and all that. So it's a lot. It's not an easy subject, and there's no one golden ticket that's gonna fix it all. But I definitely think, it's an indictment on your organization if you don't have all those tactics in your tool bag for your folks to be able to rescue somebody who's in danger. You know?
Yes. I agree with you. It can't be there can't be a broad stroke, and when the pendulum starts to swing back, we have to find where that balance falls. And there's a lot of work that has to be done and able to enact what we should be doing. We become too polar, and it's either left or right. It's never in the middle. And if it's going to be in the middle, it's going to take work on the left and right to get it there.
And all chiefs are stupid, or all firefighters are reckless. And it's the age old problem, and it takes a lot of communication. That's why I encourage fire chiefs to get out and go to the stations and have informal conversations, not just okay, he'll be here on Wednesday at 4 and make sure that, the station's clean. And like, I'm talking like stopping by on the way from work, what's going on, showing up on some scenes. And it's difficult because I was the aide to the fire chief in Atlanta, a great guy, David Chamberlain, went on to sort of be the fire chief for the Olympics in Atlanta when they were there. Still talk to him regular. He actually had a schedule, not like, okay, this station, but we had a rotation, and he wanted to hit every shift, every station, every year. And I was his aide for a couple of years. We probably were 40, 50% at best, but he was trying. And he had a different relationship than some of the other ones. And I know you get stuck in the office and you're busy, but you got to have that communication and you feel for what the boots on the ground are doing. Another example, we had a chief. We were talking about like stuff being behind. Like this was crazy. Your busy stations always have their hydrants and their reports done. Slow stations are behind. Just like a culture thing. But we were talking about like the burnout and the mistakes and stuff. And this chief was like, well, I worked there and it was busy when I worked there and we still got it done and all. And we were like, yeah, chief, when you were there, it was busy at 3,000 calls a year. Now they're at 7,200.
Right.
So your busy is not the same as their busy. And you just got to get out and communicate and make sure that you can see what's actually happening. And the way you do that, you listen to your people. Yeah.
Yes. So much yes to all of that.
Hey, you can't be like-minded now. You got to disagree with me on something.
Well, I will disagree with you when it calls for it, but no, you and I mean, there's a lot of similarities here in our approach, and I think where it comes from.
And it's not easy to do that. I'm not saying it is. It's not. It's actually hard to do that. That's why it doesn't get done, because it's easier just to stay in your office and work on your stuff and have your meetings. And on the flip side of that, I also challenge the firefighters. It's like, invite them to come, because a lot of times they don't feel welcome. And when they get there, don't freaking attack. Just have breakfast. Have breakfast a few times. Get to know who they really are. Let them talk. Then you can start building a relationship, and then you can start hitting them with some questions.
And don't forget, you're still a firefighter.
You got to have respect. You got to have respect.
These, so many administrators, right? And I call them administrators because I don't even think they're command staff. They're people that have tons of brass, but they forgot what it was like to actually pick up a line on the fire.
Overeducated, underexperienced. It's the mantra.
Yeah. No doubt. Changing direction a little bit. I don't want to tie you up too long today. I know you're a super busy man. Another message that came through this year that I thought was probably the most powerful message of everything was your willingness to talk about occupational cancer and your own struggles and battles that you had. Mike Ciampo, who is a dear friend of both of ours, his segue into speaking on stage and his message was it just reinforced your message times 1,000. Where he is, and you as well, but I know Mike personally, so I can speak to this. He's a pillar in the fire service, an incredible family man, an incredible human being, but he's also a name in the fire service that brings so much respect. And when he was able to get up there and tell his story, if you didn't hear a pin drop in that audience,
or a dry,
it was powerful, powerful. I think what you two have done with that message has changed the game in the American fire service, absolutely for the better, but to make it more aware that we need to take care of our own. Powerful, Chief. Very
and again,
powerful.
that goes back to using the platform for a purpose. And, if we could bring a salesman up to tell you how great, some product was. That's a great stage. We could probably get a lot of money for allowing somebody to do that, but that's not the purpose of it. The mission is to make the fire service better. And as I said, in my thing was something super simple, very common. It was scary, because it was an unknown. But in comparison to Mike, I mean, that is a real situation that required surgery. I mean, it's called surgery, but basically, they cut out a spot on my face and stitched it up.
But if you didn't speak up, Chief,
right? Well, I guess out of everything that happened at FDIC, which I'm super proud of, all the classes and everything, but the following week, Bill Guston called Mike and I both, or he sent us an email, and then we called him, and he said, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you guys that cancer bit." He said, "I was up close to the front. I'm watching it." And he says, "As I'm watching you put your finger on your face, Rhodes," he goes, "I reached up because I knew I had 2 or 3 spots that I'd cut shaving," because I even talked about how I cut it shaving.
Yep.
And he said, "I looked at my daughter and I said, 'Do you see these?' And she's like, 'Yeah, you need to get those checked.'" So the Thursday after everybody got home from FDIC, he went and got checked, and it was the same thing. And he had to get them taken out. That's Bill Guston, a 50-year guy who had just put it off. He was like, "It's not right, but I'm sure it's nothing," and all. But that made him go get checked.
Yes.
And I say that piece wouldn't have worked with just me. By having Mike come in as the closer with a much powerful, holding that mask up. And it's like, what we know, I mean, I know firefighters. We could have had 2 doctors up there, 2 researchers, and they were up there. They were all up there on stage with us. The message is not the same unless it comes from one of us. And so that's why that was married in with the National Fire Registry, and what they're doing is like, hey, this is important, and it can happen to any of us. And so let's get checked. Let's, we have screening at FDIC that's free for people. They put you in the light, they strip you down and put you in the curtain, and they've identified. I don't know if we've have the stats on it, but they've identified like lots of cases where people caught them early enough to go get something done about it. And that's the key. I lost a good friend of mine just a couple of years ago, Mo Baxter, again, another guy was involved with Scott Millsap from the same area. A beloved guy who he was a smoke diver instructor. He started the Flames program, and he does the Axioms of Leadership, which was Scott's program. And, he had indigestion for years and would eat a bottle of Tums, and finally it got bad enough where he went and got checked. And he said people would tell him, hey, you should go get checked. You might have like some stomach cancer or something. And he'd be like, hell, I don't want to know. Once he's diagnosed, he told me this in person. He goes, and that's where I got the line from. He goes, trust me, you do want to know. And you want to know as soon as possible, because I don't know how old you are. I'm 57, 58, 57.
47.
So
you got me by
in
10.
in my day as a kid, like I remember, like if your relative or whatever is like, oh, they got cancer, they were dead.
Yep.
It's not that way anymore.
No.
Man, things have progressed so far that the early detection is absolutely the key. And nobody wants to go get a colonoscopy, but I can tell you from experience, after the first one, it's no big deal. And they knock you out.
It's nothing.
They knock you.
Best sleep I've ever had.
Propofol. My youngest daughter's actually in school. She wants to be a nurse anesthetist, and I'm like, oh, when I'm older, you can get me propofol and I can sleep good.
That's it. Yeah,
right. Michael Jackson.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it is. It's the absolute best sleep you have. And so, and it's not just fire service, but we're seeing all these 25, 30-year-olds dying from colon cancer all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It's got to be something in the food, something, So it's like we got to be on top of that. And men hate going to the doctor, but after you've had something, and you start going, it's like no big deal anymore. It's like anything else. You kind of get used to it. You've been poked, prodded. It's just another day, and you do want to know.
Well,
you freaking want to know because there's treatment.
I'll tell you, a lot of times what's harder than actually going to the doctor is actually just talking about it with your peers. And for you and Michael to do that probably was not easy for either of you. But what that does is that lowers the fences. The guard comes down, where we can actually start talking about it now, because two of the leaders of the fire service in 2024 spoke about their own battles with it. It allows for others to now have that conversation. You create an environment where it's okay to talk about it, push one another to get tested and treated, or to be looked at. And I just think that's so important. Yep. And I can tell you that moment at FDIC was probably a lifelong memorable moment for you. It was for me. And that sticks with me. And I had lunch yesterday with Mike. We were just talking about that, and it came up a little bit, and we chatted about it. And I thanked him also for his willingness to share that story, because it is so impactful. Yep. So I did want to make sure that we talked about that before we kind of wrapped. But I just, David Rhodes, I can't even thank you enough for joining me today. This was a fantastic episode, and it was just a great conversation. It's fun to watch where fire engineering is headed, what FDIC is up to. And as I said, as a lifelong student, somebody that's very protective of the name and the legacy that goes with it, you have quite a challenge ahead of you to push this thing forward. And I wish you all the best with it. And frankly, congratulations with all of it.
We
Truly.
got some, we got a sleeper that's about to come out with Firefighter Nation, where that's going to become an industry icon soon. But we're totally shifting the focus of that from news and a few leadership pieces here and there under the old fire rescue platform to totally dedicated to health, wellness, mental health, lifestyle, leadership, and there's so much content that, like, 1 month a year is dedicated in fire engineering to health and wellness. We're dedicating every day to it with Firefighter Nation. And so we should be launching that here sometime mid-August. So look for some big things coming with that. It's going to be awesome.
Good.
So it's fun times. It's fun times. I'm blessed to have the opportunity to do it. It's fun. And I hope that, our time doing it is we're good stewards of the brand and that we actually make a difference. And
that's it. Recognizing that you're a steward of the brand, of the name. Yeah, I agree. David Rhodes, a student, a lecturer, an influencer, somebody that is making an impact on the fire service. Chief, thank you for joining me today on the podcast.
Jeremy.
A
really
real pleasure.
Enjoyed it.
Yeah, cool. Good. Stay right here. I'm going to sign off the show, and I'm going to come right back to you, okay? Awesome. Guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast. Just an incredible conversation today with Chief David Rhodes, the editor-in-chief of Fire Engineering Magazine. I challenge you younger folks, if you're not reading that magazine, if you're not going online and checking them out, you're doing a disservice to yourself in the future and educating yourself on what the fire service is truly all about. It's an institution that I grew up on, and I can't push you enough to know the people behind it and how it came about. So I challenge you with this, as I do at the end of every episode. Take this conversation, take it back to the firehouse, and talk about it, because when we're talking about the job, we're making the job better. I'll see you at the next one. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.
National Fire Radio.